politics now on The Real Story, and questions over what is fueling the rise of Senator Bernie Sanders as a real challenge to Hillary Clinton. Many of his more socialist proposals, like universal health care, free tuition at public universities, are resonating with millennial voters, despite fears from Mrs. Clinton that they would greatly grow the size of government.
150 years ago, incredibly brave Americans said, you know what? Working class kids, low-income kids should not have to work in factories or on the farms. Like rich kids, they deserve to get a free education.
I think that the best analysis that I've seen based on Senator Sanders' plans is that it would probably increase the size of the federal government by about 40%.
Wow. A look at the Fox News exit polling from New Hampshire shows Senator Sanders dominating among voters under 45, as well as voters who say their biggest priorities are income inequality, as well as wanting an honest candidate. Joining me now, Catherine Timpf, reporter for the National Review and a Fox News contributor, and Jessica Tarlob, Democratic pollster and senior political strategist for Schoen Consulting. You're both millennials.
Yes.
Catherine, let me start with you. Why do so many young people want to elect a socialist?
Well, obviously, what he's proposing here would never work. It would be a disaster. But what he's doing is he's directly reaching out to millennials and saying, here are solutions, or he's calling them that I'm offering you. And then conservatives in particular just tend to say, oh, see, look, these lazy millennials, they just want free stuff. And they should be saying, oh, this won't work, and here's why, and this is why, don't make it worse, and this is what I'll do for you instead. Because you know what? Nobody is going to want to support someone who's insulting them. You know, I'm not really a sociologist, but I think that's pretty obvious. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Well, is it, Jessica, that young people just haven't been out in the real world enough? They haven't paid taxes. They haven't paid their health care bills.
Right.
You know,
well,
I know they have a lot of student debt.
Okay.
Right.
So
yeah.
it does make a difference that our generation has not felt the full thrust of the responsibility.
Well, and also they don't remember the Cold War.
No.
So, I mean, is that part of it? Is that why they think they look at Europe and they think, wow, that's fantastic?
Well, we have seen statistics that show that over 30% of millennials have an incredibly positive view of socialism. But I think there's also just a lot of bad information out there. And we were talking about this before we came on, that Bernie Sanders says, well, they can do it in the UK or in France. The UK has 64 million people. We have over 300 million people.
Right.
Our demographics are wildly different.
Totally.
And I think this is such a deep challenge for Hillary Clinton to be able to paint him as unrealistic without offending him or his voters and saying, you guys are a bunch of dummies if you think this is going to happen.
Completely. But here's the thing. We have fought wars.
Right.
Men and women have died in this country to fight against communism, and many of these same principles, quite honestly, Catherine, I mean, it's astounding.
It's horrifying, and I think that's what people should be pointing out rather than insulting millennials specifically, even though it is a little embarrassing for me and does upset me when I see some of my friends saying, yeah, Bernie, see, it's not fair that I don't have this and that. It's like, well, it's actually going to be even worse if this goes through, and this is terrifying. But that's what we need to be pointing out more often, because if you don't know, then you might think it sounds great.
The populist message works. Like just in that little snippet that we played from Bernie Sanders, where he said, it reminds me of Obama, quite frankly, where he said, you know, poor people should be able to go to college free like rich kids. Free? If the rich kids actually, if that's actually true, quite possibly their parents worked incredibly hard to be able to pay for them the full ride to go to college.
Well, I think the most dangerous part of this, and I say this as a very strong liberal and as a supporter of Hillary Clinton, that this is completely anti-capitalist, which is foundational to what makes America great, not to sound Trumpian at all. But we're moving away from a place where we can really take stock of how important it is that we're a capitalist nation and what the free market can do with a strong safety net. And I think that's where Hillary's message really should resonate, where she says, of course I'm for universal health care, but let's talk about reality. We couldn't get it passed with a Democrat-controlled Congress.
True.
What do you think you're going to do?
And I thought it was fascinating that last night she said that Sanders' proposals would add 40% to the government. And that's a Democrat. That's a Democrat saying that. What do Republicans need to do then to reach out to the millennials?
The attitude, reach out and kind of explain these sorts of things, because the fact that they're listening to Bernie Sanders kind of shows how desperate they are for someone to pay attention to them. Don't let people get away with this ridiculous narrative of, you know, conservatives don't want you to have this because they actually hate poor people and they don't care if you get sick and they don't want you to go to college. They don't care. That's ridiculous, but it's a narrative that they've been getting away with for so long.
I think also, and I mean, it's tied to this, I think that Republicans, granted I don't speak for the Republican Party, but I think think, millennials are much more open about gay marriage.
Yes.
They're a much more diverse group, and they don't want to hear race baiting. They don't want to hear,
So they just tune it out from the beginning.
Well, right.
And
They just
don't
say,
get
you're
down.
not speaking to me in the way that I see the world.
Okay.
And I know the Republican Party is making a big push on that, but I think they need to do way better if they're going to steal these voters.
All right.
Yes.
Jessica and Catherine, thank you.
Thank you.